Hello, everybody. And it's not welcome to another episode. It's the Thriving Adoptees podcast. It's hello to a webinar about selling more books outside of Amazon. And my fantastic co-host, the guy who's done this, the guy I'm going to be exploring this with, is Ed. So, hi, Ed. Let's pretend that we haven't spent the last 3 minutes talking to each other.
Simon, it's good to see you today. Thank you for having me here.
It's good to be seen. Definitely, it's good to be seen. So Ed and I planned this out a couple of weeks ago, and the first thing that we came up with was around this being about us, right? It's about how persistent we are in exploring, doing our marketing experiments. It's our ability to stick at it, right? And the amount of time that we want to give to it. So I think as authors, so much time gets put into writing the book. How much time is it that we're actually going to devote to trying different things to see if it
I think what we traditionally hear, Simon, is that writing the book turns into the easy part, and you spend as much time or more time marketing the book once it's written than you actually do the writing. And I think we're seeing more and more, even from the traditional side, that support comes in 30-day increments, and a publisher will give you 30 days of support, and then you're on your own. And my experience, and I think most people will see it the same way, is that 30 days doesn't even crack the surface if you want something to get something out there and really make it successful.
Yeah. And I guess the good news is, folks, that if you've got a book, then you've already developed some sort of persistence, right? You've already done it. It's just a matter of applying, just in inverted commas. It's a matter of taking the persistence that you've put your heart, soul, blood, guts, and persistence, and everything's gone in to the book. It's now, well, how much do you want to put in to making this all happen? And I'm going to share some stuff on that in terms of my own learnings, because I actually have written a book, but it was nothing to do with the adoption stuff. But when I went out into the world, I thought, I don't know how to market stuff. And there's all these people telling me that they do know how to market stuff. And there's all these people telling me that they have, and they've been where I've been, and they feel my pain. They're writers, right? So they can get under our skin, and they can tell us that, they were where we were until they found the XYZ. And if then we're into this we're into this sales funnel where they tell us that they can help our book be a success with if we pay them this much money and this much time. And I fell for it. I fell for it. Often they'll invite us on webinars just like this one to give us one part of the piece, but then they'll tell us that we have to buy this much after them. We're not doing that here, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. We're not doing that. Ed is just going to be sharing some of the stuff that he has learned. There is no upsell. There is no 5 steps booklet that you can buy for $1, $5, £1. We're not doing that here. All we're doing is we're helping adoptees learn some stuff, think about stuff, some marketing stuff a little bit differently, in the hope that helps you get some sort of clarity on what you want for this. So what do you make of all that, Ed?
Well, I would just like to say I have nothing to sell. As I said, I would like to learn from other people's experiences, and everything I know up to now is really are pieces that I've gleaned that other people have provided to me. There are some great podcasts out there that share information on publishing, and there are some that are there purely to sell, as you said. And I even just finished reading a book this morning from somebody who's talking about how to re-release your book. And it was 82 pages of call us and we'll sell you the magic formula. And there is no magic formula. As you started this with, it starts with persistence. If you write a book and you put it out there and hope it will sell, it will probably sell to as many family and friends as you have, and kind of peter off from there. If you will put your nose to the grindstone with it, it's, people always ask me, how's your book selling? And my answer is one book at a time. And, and it all happens through hard work. If I asked you about how is your podcast, and it's one show at a time, and you are fabulously persistent with your podcast.
Yeah, I'm stuck at it. I've done 320 odd episodes now. I've been at it 2.5 years, and we're on 54,000 downloads. Wow. Well, it's like what you compare with, right? So Hayley Radke, she's been going 6 years and she's got over 1.1 million downloads. So I am ahead of some people and behind others, and a long way behind the leading adoptee author. But one of the big things for me that I've been measuring myself on that for quite a while, the impact that I'm making in the world. And at Christmas, a fellow adoptee, Vin, who's been on the show, helped me see this completely different, he helped me to a complete epiphany moment when something that he said made me realize that I would rather be doing my podcast my way with my numbers than anybody else's podcast their way with their numbers. It's most important that I do things that in accordance with the way that I believe is going to support and help other adoptees. And that, for me, that means interviewing people about their insights, more about what they've learned than the story that they've been through. It's for me, it's all about insights, epiphany moments, eye-opening moments when our beliefs change, hopefully for the better, because that's what's made my life better. Those insights, those moments when the beliefs get busted, and that essential belief that there's something wrong with us as adoptees, that we're damaged goods, that we're faulty, that we need to be returned, whatever horrible metaphor you have on that. So yeah, and what does that mean to you? Well, do your marketing in a way. If you still haven't written your book, write the book that you want to write, and if you've got your book but you just want it to get out there more, then market it, sell it in the way that feels right for you, that's congruent to where you're going. Yeah, don't the 5 steps to selling more books, that all this reverse engineered stuff doesn't work, because one of the things that the counter to that is coming up with a personal strategy and a one based on experimentation, because that's what marketing is. It's an experiment. there is a silver bullet. It's try something new, see if it works, do more of it. That if it doesn't, do less of it. That is the silver bullet approach to selling anything, right? So what, I've got a list of, and there's something about the numbers as well. So I've got about 1,000 people on my list that I've come in contact with through the podcast, and 16 of you are here. So that means 900. I can't do the sum. 984 are not here, right? I think we had 60 sign up because people are going to listen to the recording. But so all that, I sent out 3 or 4 emails to 1,000 people, and 80 people showed up, and I know some of them very well. Some of them I've spoken to 2 or 3 times, and yet we're on 60 things. So personal strategy that you're gonna that's what you've kind of developed, haven't you, Ed? A personal strategy.
Yeah, to give you just a little bit of background, I went very late in my adulthood searching for the woman who would place me for adoption. And I had some thoughts in my mind of who I was going to find. And I made some very unexpected discoveries. And as I started my search, I started to record the search itself as I started to make those discoveries, and found out who my mother was. I started to write about that. And then people were urging me, this is interesting, write a book. And so I wrote a book. And then I queried 83 agents, 81 of whom ignored me. One actually has my own last name, and it's a rather unusual last name. He blew me off. But those last 2 didn't take me where I wanted to go. It was discussion, and I was sitting there saying, okay, I'm over 70 years old at that point, and on top of that, I'm an impatient person. And I said, if one of these people were to grab my book and go out to represent it, it's going to take time to find a publisher. And when you find a publisher, it takes time to get a book to market. I said, I'm going to do this on my own. And I did it, and I think I did it well. And the one thing I didn't think about is who am I going to sell it to? I just assumed you put a book out there and people go and buy it. And that was my first lesson. So, I went out and I thought, okay, there's not just a general audience. And I found out that, in my search, that my mother had been a celebrity ice skater in the 1940s and 1950s. So I said, well, damn it, I'm going to sell my book to ice skaters. And there are a whole bunch of Facebook pages out there for ice skaters, most of them young people, not people who would have been in their late 80s or 90s like my mother. And yeah, I sold a small number. And I said, okay, what else? Who else? And I said, it's obvious. I'm an adoptee. I will sell to the adoption community. And there were some people who embraced me and were interested. There were some people who did not embrace my story, and if anything, kind of pushed me away. And at that point, I just decided I was going to go wide. I was going to spread my arms, and I was going to approach anybody who reads a good story. And I think that's the key to selling books, is you have to have a good story to sell. You have to have something that people want to read. And, if you have a very narrow channel, you will sell to a narrow group of people. That would probably be it, though. So, I think know who your audience is, or have something that appeals to the audience that you're marketing to.
Yeah, but you went wide.
I did go wide,
wide and narrow. Like 1 minute
Well,
you go
yeah,
narrow.
yeah. I certainly started narrow. And, in my marketing or in my presenting of the book and of my story, I went from those skating folks to adoption folks. And as I said, some people kind of said, no, your story's not for us. Others said, yeah, this is a story that we have interest in. We're very supportive. And, I think it's a good lesson to learn is not everybody's going to like what you're selling.
Yeah. See, what I was trying to draw attention to is Ed did both, right? So some people will say, like most internet marketing people say, identify your audience, go after them, narrow it down, and that's and so the whole thing is based on the narrow, right? And then not many people say narrow and then wide. Some people will say, right, just go wide. But Ed's doing both, right? He did both. And he didn't. You did that intuitive to. Nobody told you to do that, did they, Ed? I'm guessing you just figured it. You got a feel for it, right?
Yeah, I did have a feel for it, and I think part of my educational process as I was getting ready to publish the book is there's a wonderful podcast out there called The Creative Pen. That's a woman, Joanna Penn, who is a Brit, or she's an Australian who is now living in England. And, and she's very, very, very productive. And she talks about publishing wide, which means getting out of that Amazon only niche. And, and Amazon is a great thing. It probably it's allowed me to publish a book. It's probably allowed some number of people in this group today to publish books. And but you can get locked in there if you want to just say, I have written a book and it's published. Good. Leave it on Amazon, but your options then remain limited. But if you go outside of Amazon, there are ways to get your book into the hands of other readers.
Yeah. So do you want to get into some of these different distribution channels, Ed?
Well, sure. You have an option with Amazon. You can make more commission or royalties with them if you say, I am exclusive to Amazon. And if you are good at advertising and driving your readers to Amazon, there are people out there making a whole lot of money. There are also some people who are making very little, but again, can say, I've written a book and it's published. I didn't go with that Amazon exclusivity because I wanted the ability to put my books in bookstores, in libraries, in digital format in libraries. So I did not go with Amazon exclusive. I settled for a lesser royalty rate and put my books out with a couple of others or through a couple of other sources. Here in the States, we use Ingram Spark, which is again, a print-on-demand publisher, and they then distribute through their own distribution network, which is Ingram. And if bookstores will not buy through Amazon, libraries will not buy through Amazon because Amazon will not offer them discounts. Ingram will offer them discounts. So, all of the majority of our booksellers order through Ingram when it's time. There's nothing I would have liked any more than to walk into Barnes and Noble and see my book on the end cap of a rack there. I was more realistic than that. It just doesn't happen. Big publishers buy those positions. They reward Barnes and Noble. They reward booksellers for that prime space. But I wanted my book to be available through the booksellers, and that's turned out to be a very positive thing. There is also money to be made in libraries, and again, it depends on the nature of your book, but I felt mine was a good option. And Ingram sends out a monthly listing to libraries of what's available to them. I marketed it as well. I marketed directly to libraries. and kind of had the fortunate situation is as I learned about my birth mother and her performing career, I knew pretty much every stop she made along the course of her career. And I started sending letters to the collection development people in San Francisco and Los Angeles and Las Vegas and Detroit and Chicago saying, you know, a gazillion years ago, my mom skated with this organization in your city, and I think this would be of interest to you. And remarkably, the return rate from those libraries, or the purchase rates, was quite high. So, you know, it gave me the option. The libraries had the option of going to Ingram to purchase the book. I'm right now in the process of working with my book designer and cover designer to put out a large print edition of the book. Libraries love large print. I could not do that through Amazon. Two limitations, you know, as number one, libraries would not buy it from Amazon. Number two, given the size of the book, Amazon could not print it on demand. So Ingram was my go-to on that one.
Yeah. So I love the different formats. So I was actually in publishing before I came into this, a long time before I came to this place, but I was in a niche that was nothing to do with selling books through bookstores or Amazon or anything. It was a completely different niche of publishing. But what I did learn was the more formats we can have. We can repurpose stuff into different formats. And I used to sell a sponsored product, and it was a ring binder, and it was sent free of charge to all the schools and colleges in the UK. And the companies paid £7,500 for this in 1995. But there was just one format. But over the years, I added lots of different formats. So I put in, we didn't do a large print format because it wasn't for older people. It was but we did do a lower language level version of the case studies that we're writing and then we did a less able version. And then we did teachers' guides and lesson plans and worksheets and audios and PowerPoints. And like we basically just over the years, we developed the same core content. We spun the same sort of core content in lots of different ways.
Right.
And that led us to 4 times and we obviously, so in 95 we had a binder and a CD-ROM, and then by 2011 we had a website with like 20 million downloads a year. So PowerPoints, these lesson plans, all these stuff I'm talking about. So by spinning our book into spinning our case studies into different formats, we 4x the order value, but we also did a little bit of shed more value to the people that were using our content. So my question to you is what to think about is what different formats could you spin your stuff into? So if I'm thinking into an adoption space, you know, you can think of, right, so who are my different audiences? The adoptee. What about the adoptive parent? What about adoption agencies? And think about getting some conversations going with different audiences about what you could write to make your book work for them. So the stunning simplicity of a large format text is brilliant. And yeah, absolutely brilliant.
You know, what I found with that, Simon, is that the book resonates with mature women. And I've lost track of what mature really is anymore. But yeah, but women 60, 70, 80 years old. And large print for somebody, you know, I wear glasses, I can't take them off anymore. And when I went to do my research on bindings and sizes of books and pricing of books, I went to the library and went down the large print rack, and they are a pleasure to read. They are an absolute pleasure to read because they're big and you're flipping pages like crazy. But it's putting out something that's going to be of value to a segment of your audience. And you know, I hear all the time that, gee, your book should really be in audio format, because I don't read books anymore. I listen to books when I'm in the car. Yeah, that's a consideration for the future, but it's an expensive consideration. You know, doing variations of your print book is a fairly nominal investment in the big picture. I think with AI coming on, you know, another year or so, we're going to be putting books out in foreign languages because AI has translated them for us. Right now, translating my book to German would probably cost $10,000, and you know that's not doable.
Yeah, I just want to jump on the audio thing here, because I only read books when I'm on holiday, but I listen to books all the time. Like I listen to podcasts all the time, and people think, well, audio, you've got to do, if you're going to do an audiobook, you've got to do an Audible version. Well, like you've got to do it because that's Amazon's platform, right? So my favorite author has loads of audiobooks, and none of them are on Audible, presumably because they give him such a small amount, he just doesn't want to do it. But you can buy his audiobooks off his website, and then they download, and they're in the file. You know,
yeah, I think that's. I think, you know, talking about the website sales, I sell a lot of books directly from the website, and you know, and that takes some keeping a stock of books at home, keeping packaging materials, you know, being able to process payments, and that's not really a terribly big deal if, you know, if you've got the time to do it. One other thing that I do is I use something called PayHip, which is an application, and I can download or any reader can download my book via PayHip from my website, and that is absolutely hands-off for me. So if you're an ebook reader, you can go to the site, you know, pay via PayPal and download it, and anybody can do that. It was probably one of the easiest things I did in the journey of selling my books was put PayHip on the website, and it's just a matter of, again, driving your readers there. I use that for some promotional things as well. About a year ago, I supported a 5K, a 5K running race, which supported adoption. And essentially, we put a coupon into everybody's swag bag, which said, here's your promo code. After the race, go and download the book. And I gave the book away, and it was with the intent of again, just getting more eyes on it. And it was quite simple, and never had a hiccup with that book downloading as it was supposed to.
Yeah, Anne's just mentioning there's a large cost for audiobook and the narration. So yes, there is, and and I forgot to say this, but Audible has some very high quality thresholds that people have told me about, and it's a complete pain in the proverbial. However, you know, you can, if you want to narrate the book yourself and sell your audiobook on your own site, then that's going to be a lot cheaper. And you can also find somebody to do the voiceover a lot cheaper at a different quality level to Audible's. So I use a website called upwork.com for digital tasks. any digital task. So a digital task could be you send them a version of your book, a manuscript of a book, and they read it out, or you do it yourself, and that's it. But obviously, this is what we're saying about what I was mentioning about a personal strategy. You know, some people. So I wouldn't be happy narrating my own book because my reading voice isn't great. No,
I'm not able either.
Yeah, you know, but there's a different thresholds. So it costs an awful lot to do an Audible compatible narration. It costs a lot less than that to do a self-published audio version that you're going to sell off your own.
I've got two quick points with that. I just saw a comment come through that ACX or Audible will match you with narrators who may work at no cost to you, and it's a share of the royalties. And Findaway Voices does the same thing. I've had no luck with that. The folks who want to do who are open to doing the shares are looking for, you know, books that have really had a great deal of traction in creating revenue. So if, yeah, bless anybody who's had a better experience. I keep on trying. My other with the home cooked version is I met with somebody recently who actually went on to Fiverr, I think, and found a narrator and said, this is the maximum I'll pay. And they had a conversation. They decided not to do it. And then the person decided he would employ his girlfriend to narrate the book. And she did a lovely job narrating, and everything was fine until the two of them broke up and things just went right down the tube. So yeah. His final advice on doing a home cooked book like that is do not let your love interest narrate your book.
No. Rod's saying that Fiverr's got a lot of scammers. Fiverr, it's for very low, it's for tasks that can be done for a Fiverr, so £5. Oh yeah, a quid is £1. So some American asked me what's a quid the other week. A quid is £1. So £5 or $5. Upwork is like Fiverr, but it's a far higher quality. They used to have a minimum of $20, but they have it's like the difference. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a metaphor. It's just way better. It's way better. It's way more professional. And Fiverr is very cheap and cheerful. So you talked. So on the distribution channels, Ed, you've talked about Ingram Spark. Then last time you mentioned there was one called Draft to Digital.
Yeah, correct. We talked about Ingram. We talked about building a website presence and selling from there. But I use an organization called Draft to Digital, and Draft to Digital, I guess, is an aggregator. You can load your book to them, and this is predominantly with ebooks, but they are now doing print on demand as well. But they will get your book out to any number of sources, and they are my key to the library context. They got me on the two big library providers in terms of downloadable books are Libby, which used to be called Overdrive here, and the other one is called Hoopla. And basically every time your book is checked out.
Let me know if you need anything, Evan. Thanks.
Anytime your book is checked out from a library, you get a payment. And depending on which of those platforms you use, the payment could be fairly small. Some of them are substantially larger. But again, that gets you distribution immediately over a very wide range. They interact with Kobo Writing Life, which is the big platform in Canada, and I believe in Europe larger than Amazon at this point for e-readers. So you can go into Draft to Digital, you can get your books in the hands of a lot of avenues that it would take a lot of work to get to otherwise. you can do them one at a time yourself. I thought for the small amount that I paid Drafted Digital for that, it's well worthwhile. They take 10% of your royalties.
Yeah. So in terms of distribution, we've got Ingram Spark, we've got Drafted Digital. Ed's already mentioned your own website, so building your own website, and I have a Wix website, which is one of the cheap ways that you can have your website.
If you need me though, you might need to holler. I've got my headphones in.
Sorry,
just 'cause
guys,
there's
we've
so
got
much noise going on. Thanks.
So could everybody mute themselves, please? We're just getting a bit of background stuff on. I don't know how to mute everybody but Ed and me. Sorry. They are, and the other distribution channel that you've really gone to town on is your local outlets, right, Ed?
Yeah, and local is kind of I guess a subjective term. Regional is probably better, but it's really it's knocking on doors and building relationships. And most bookstores, or many independent bookstores, if they will not buy your book through Ingram Spark, have consignment programs, and it will get your book on the shelf and add really no different end cost to you as it would be if they purchased through Ingram. So, my local bookstore will take my books on consignment. Actually, they've now started purchasing them. But when it was a consignment deal, I would get 70% of the retail price. They would retain 30%. And when you put your book up with Ingram, and it's fairly standard, they say, what kind of a discount are you willing to offer to retailers or to libraries? And you've got to pick someplace between 35 and 60% typically. And, and that's where you start to look and find out that there are few people getting rich in the book business these days.
Yeah. So that's one of the, so I'm trying to open the chat, but I can't see it. Rod, can you unmute yourself and talk about the elephant in the room? Can we just bring that out?
All right. Sorry, I didn't want to be too invasive, but
no, go for it, mate. Go for it.
Okay, so I've published 25 books and 20 of them on audiobooks as well. But the elephant in the room, just like newspaper reading, book reading is kind of a dying thing. You got niches of people that still read a lot, but you have the cross section of people who just like to scroll on social media, and that's it. That's their consumption of news or media or whatever it is. So just realize if you're getting into the book publishing or book writing business, you may not become rich and famous. You may not even sell a lot. It may be more like a Tupperware thing where you're going to sell, like you said at the beginning, to family and friends, and then it's just all going to go away. So you just got to realize that might be a possibility. So don't get your hopes up being the next Stephen King or J.K. Rowling, and then you'll be okay. That's all I want to say, really.
Yeah, I think you're right on point, Rod. There are very few people getting rich in the book writing business. But I think the group that's here is probably, committed to a personal story and a story that they want to communicate at. And again, if it's something that is very niche oriented, it will sell to that niche and probably stop there. I think most of our stories, though, in some way can be made of interest to a broader audience. Then it's a matter of, how much work are we willing to put into to really put it into the hands of that audience.
Yeah, and we had an adoptive on Michelle Vanderpass on a couple of months ago doing a webinar on how to promote your book, and what she set out to me was, don't think of the book as the be all and end all. Is the book a step to something else? Right? So for me, like, speaking gigs is what I'm keen to get. So I have a trickle of speaking gigs starting to come in. If I were to write a book, it'd probably make it easier for me to get speaking gigs. Perhaps it might do this. And on the back of those, so sometimes a lot of times I do those speaking gigs for nothing. Sometimes I'll get like 100.
Lou, come here. Lou. Come here, girl. You got another one.
Shall I let me just see if I can, how do I do that? Mute everybody. Reactions. No, it's gone quiet. I can't figure out how to do it. Oh, it must be there. Right? Mute my audio. No, sorry. So sometimes I get paid £100, sometimes I get £200, $200. But I did get one out of the blue. Well, not out of the blue. I made some connections last year, and somebody offered me, and I was like, yeah, like $2,000 for a keynote speaking thing. But that came off the back of the podcast, right? So the podcast for me is I do the podcast because I love the conversations, and anything else is icing on the cake, really. So if you want to get speaking gigs, having a book helps you get speaking gigs. You might be doing the speaking gigs to get paid. You might be doing the speaking gigs because you just want to share your story. But it'll help you having a book. I'm sure having a book would help me. It doesn't feel right for me at the moment, and I prefer talking to people like you than the solitary occupation of writing. So yeah, outlets. So the next bit was the how are we going to create relationships? How are we going to open doors to people that may help us get our hands into get our book into other people's hands? So Ed has talked about face-to-face, right? Oh, like going in and actually speaking to people. You've done that, right, Ed?
I have, and I think there's number one is getting in the door, and number two is what do you do once you're in the door? And I've found any number of bookstores who are very happy to plunk me down at a table in the middle of the floor on a Saturday or on an indie bookstore day. This past indie bookstore day, we went to a little town, and we weren't sure anybody up there even read books. And I sold a case of books while I sat there during the course of the day. I go to libraries and I will do a presentation on the writing of the book. I have a PowerPoint presentation, and it's a unique story. So it has some traction. I found out that when my mother was 18 years old, she appeared as an extra in a movie in Hollywood. And I've got a copy of that movie, and I go and I show the movie, and it's constantly building community. It's building interest and trying to hold on to those people. I think the more people you talk to, the greater the advantage to you is if you can grab an email address from them. Get an email address and then stay in touch with them. So it's building the platform on a website. It's getting out with a newsletter, which I admittedly have not been terribly good at. I'm struggling the past week or so trying to learn MailChimp and how to build something credible there so I can start to get out a regular newsletter. But it's building platform, and it's building community with people. It's coming and talking with, something like this, getting on podcasts with folks like you, Simon, and again.
Can I do an advert? Can I do an advert?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm not trying to sell you anything at all, but if you have a book, if you're an adoptee and you've got a book and you'd like to come on the podcast and talk to me about what you've learned, and we'll plug your book at the end, then we do that, right? So yeah, but I'm not asking for any money, right? Just to be clear.
No, I'll do a testimonial. I met Simon when I listened to following another adoptee, and she was an author, and she was on Simon's podcast, and I reached out one day and I got an answer back the next, and I think we were talking online a week later. So, so Simon is as good as his word there.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah. On the email side, yeah, use MailChimp and stuff like that. It is very important to keep a community going and keep the email address up. All that stuff is really important. MailChimp is free for some usage, I think. I use a program called Streak. Does streaking mean running around the streets naked in America like it does in the UK?
It does.
It does, okay. So it's spelt that way, but it's nothing to do with that. And so Streak. So I use Streak, and if you came to here through an email, like I know Angie, you did, I know and Keith, you did. So you came because you got a Streak, you got an email from me through Streak, and Streak sits on top of Gmail, and it's whereas MailChimp is separated out. But Streak is like $20 a month or something like that. But I love it, and it sits with Gmail, and it builds a database and all that good stuff as well. So you can obviously other different email formats are available. MailChimp is probably one of the easiest and a free usage. It is all about community, and Ed's mentioned about podcast guesting, right? So get there is I'll send it out. I'll find it and send it on out to you on when I send you the recording. But I found a podcast website that lists 70 adoption podcasts. So some are for adoptive parents, some are for adoptees, and some of them are for both. And then just try those. Get in touch with those. Look at those people, follow them through, and get in touch with them. And the reason that I use Streak is Streak will send 3 or 4 reminders, 5 reminders. Send as many reminders as you like, but because I'm quite prolific, when anybody asks me if they come on the podcast, I'll speak to them. So I'll say yes. Some adoption podcasts have like a questionnaire they want filling in. Some of them aren't producing as, not many of them are producing as many as me. Some people are doing them weekly, some people are doing them monthly. So have a look at how active those people are before you do it. But yeah, podcast guesting is a great way to get your voice out there. Or podcast hosting, if that's not a step too far for you. Like I have built my list of 1,100 people by emailing people and saying, do you want to come on my podcast? So I'm giving something, people.
You're providing a platform.
You're providing a platform for people.
And I think the important thing to also remember, I think a lot of us are not natural self-promoters. And I think the greatest fear is somebody's going to look at us and say no. I think there are a lot of places that want to say yes. They're looking for content. And I think it's on the podcast side. I think it's on the library side. I don't like being rejected either, but I go in, and more often than not, I've met really, really, really nice people. So I've kind of gotten over that rejection concern. It's, you go in, if they say no, yeah, okay, you move on. But there are lots of opportunities out there, but it takes, where we started, persistence, it takes creativity, and it just takes the doggedness to go on and look for the next option when the last one did or didn't work.
Yeah. J.K. Rowling's got rejected by how many publishers? 500 or something? The KFC guy, Colonel Sanders, he got rejected by 500. Maybe that's where the figure 500 is sticking on. He got rejected by 500 chicken selling companies. He was trying to sell his sauce. Initially, that's where showing, and he got knocked back by 500. And yeah, rejection and adoptees. Tricky one, right?
Yeah.
Tricky one. I've done a lot of sales. It still hurts me, guys. But it's like somebody. I saw something on a group called Adoptee. I don't know, Adoptee Voices or something like that. What do they call them? Anyway, they said this one said, like, I've got all this. I'm ready to go with my social media marketing, but I've got imposter syndrome. How do I start? And I saw that most people had ignored the question, so the answers. So I thought, well, I gave it 2 answers. So the first was to talk about me, and I said, well, for me to move forward, my passion had to be bigger than my fear. Right. So when your passion becomes bigger than your fear, then the fear don't matter. It's like it's out of the ring. So that's perhaps a psychological answer. And then the action answer is my second answer was just start. Like, how do I start? You start.
Put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. And the next one becomes flame. It's like Indiana Jones, and when he's going across that chasm in the first Temple of Doom, he's going across this. There's this massive, great chasm, and the step, the stepping stones only appear as he's going for them, and that's what selling books or selling anything is like. Each step becomes clear as we take the next step. So how do you take the next step? You take the next step. And then people say, well, I'm getting in my own way. No, you're not getting in your own way. There's only one of you. The only thing that's getting in your way is an idea that you're going to get rejected. Well, you might get a knockback, but it's not really personal. Down to them or their mood, their inclination. So each step reveals, as you know, take step. So, but what everybody on the internet is doing is saying, well, I've done the steps and I've learned the secret. So pay me and I'll show you. Well, their description of what's happened to them has become a prescription for you. And life doesn't work like that. If it did, then we'd all be selling billions of everything, wouldn't we? So the last one that we had on our structure, Ed, was support. So you talked about authors' fairs. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's probably as much about the how and the platform building. It's, I've found now that we're out of COVID, or COVID is somewhere in the rear view mirror, a number of libraries have put together local author fairs because they realize in their patron base, there are people like myself and other people on this call who have written books and are looking for opportunities to talk about them and to market them. And so I've done 3 of them in the past 4 months, I believe. And it's a great opportunity to do 2 things. Number one, to obviously meet readers and hopefully sell books. Number 2, to meet other authors. And it's a great opportunity also to encourage other authors or to share information. And there are people who've got that imposter syndrome saying, I really don't know that I belong here, but I signed up anywhere. And it's a matter of telling them, yeah, you do belong here. You had a story that you committed yourself to telling. You've got every bit as much right to be here as anybody else. So there are a lot of those things going on. There are, and they typically involve a room or a platform to do readings. If you've got the opportunity, do that. Yeah. And it's crazy not to do it. And part of this is just, some of it is just lucky breaks as well. It's finding the right person at the right time.
And we're back to the start, really, like as much time as you want to put in, like how the more, generally speaking, the more you put in, the more you're going to get out. But you've got to decide, like a personal strategy, how much time you want to put into this.
It's interesting, Simon, you mentioned before, one of the options to self-promote is create a podcast, which is a huge investment in time, I think. Back in the early stretch after my book was published, we live in a nice subdivision type community with a clubhouse. My wife, who is a member of the book club, coordinated for the book club an author fair. And and she had an underlying motive. It was to help me promote my book.
Yeah.
But it brought in 7 other authors, and we spent 4 hours there, had a bunch of people come through. And again, it was, it gave the authors the opportunity to talk about their books. And it gave a lot of people the opportunity of, wow, I never met an author before.
Yeah.
And they don't know it's the same guy who was at the swimming pool yesterday, but it worked out to everybody's benefit. So, that's something, that anybody in this room could possibly coordinate as well. If there's not one locally, theoretically you could drum one up. It doesn't take a great deal.
So what I want to underline here is Ed's creativity with this, right? So you're a creative person, you've written a book, you've brought something into the world. You have that creativity within you to do that. And it's a matter of taking your creativity and pointing it in the way of this, this marketing thing. So Andy's on the call. Andy Wallace is on the call. He's going to be on the podcast soon. He's writing a book at the moment, and he's writing it as a blog. So you'll see him in the Adopted Chameleon writing it as a blog. Brilliant way. So if you're thinking about writing a second book, you could do it. Maybe do something that Andy's doing. So he's creating. He's getting feedback on his content, and then he's going to build that up, and that's going to be his book. And I'm sorry, I've got to go now. Sorry, I didn't notice the time. So we're not going to have time for questions. That wasn't my intention. Sorry, Ed. We wanted to have some questions, but something else has come up, and I had to take a call for this hour. So thank you very much for listening. Ed, any parting moments?
I'd just like to, we've got 19 people in the room. I'd like to thank you for being here. And I hope there was something of value to you. It's if you've written a book, if you plan to write a book, take pride in it and go sell it. Go push it. You have every right to do that and be confident. Yeah.
And if there are any questions, right, just ping them to me, Simon at thrivingadoptees.com, and I will answer them, or more likely punt them on to Ed and we'll answer them. So thank you very much. And did I thank everybody for coming? See, now I'm feeling bad. I didn't do that, did I? I should have started better. That was my adrenaline, ladies and gentlemen. So we've got another podcast. Sorry, we've got another webinar coming up on writing books soon, and hope to see you there. And thank you very much for coming. And thank you, Ed, for sharing so openly. You've been an absolute star.
Thank you. I think you had my email or my link on the materials. Please, anybody who's got questions or comments, feel free to reach out.
Okay, great. Lots of love. Speak to you all soon, guys. Bye. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.